This is Dom Bettinelli, the CEO of SQPN, with a brief but very important message. For more than a decade, SQPN has produced the Catholic faith and pop culture podcasts that you love. We're a non-profit organization, so it's only your generosity that lets us carry out our mission. We haven't run a fundraiser in 2 years, and that's why we need to ask for your help right now. Please make a pledge of whatever amount you can afford to help us continue providing your favorite podcasts, as well as exciting new ones we have planned. To make your pledge and find out about the free thank you gifts we'd like to send you, visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give. Thank you for your generosity. May we hear from you today? You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, episode number 28.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. Today we're discussing Star Trek Discovery's second episode, or the second half of the first episode, however you want to look at it, The Battle at the Binary Stars. And joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going?
So I want to start, as we do often, to remind you to remember to like Secrets of Star Trek on Facebook. If you go to the Facebook and find the SQPN page and find our episodes posted there, if you could like those, retweet our episodes on Twitter, to leave us comments, subscribe. If you don't yet subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or on YouTube, where if you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to get notifications when we post a new episode. And please share the podcast with your friends to help us grow our community and reach more listeners. That's what we're here for, is to have an audience. We're not just doing this for ourselves. So we want to reach more and more folks. So there's lots of Star Trek fans out there that we think would enjoy this. And if you could help reaching out to them, we'd greatly appreciate it. One way you can do that is also by leaving a review, like on iTunes or in the the other podcast directories also let you leave reviews of podcasts. And we greatly appreciate you doing that for us to help us continue. I do want to take a moment. We've been talking about this for some time now. We're part of SQPN, the StarQuest Podcast Network, or Production Network is technically what we say, the StarQuest Production Network, and we're in the middle of a giving campaign. We are a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to explore the intersection of faith and pop culture, in this case, the intersection of faith and faith-related themes in Star Trek, and as well as to just enjoy it as we do as fans. But we can only do that, we can only continue to do these podcasts through the generosity of listeners like you. In order, the ability to do all of these different podcasts that we do requires a full-time attention. It's a full-time job for one person, me. And so we rely on your generosity to help us to not only pay my salary, but to pay all of the production costs. We have to buy software, hardware,
hosting costs,
hosting.
Yeah.
There are quite a few costs that are involved when you have a podcast network. And so our ability to continue to do this, it depends entirely on you. And we really need you to go to sqpn.com/give today and to click on the Become a Patron button. There are various levels of giving you could become a giver at. If you do, we offer some thank you gifts for you for making a gift today. Some of them are Star Trek related, which you might enjoy. We think you'll enjoy those. There are also some related to some of our other shows as well. If you decide to choose from among those, it's your choice. So again, if you can go to sqpn.com/give, we greatly appreciate it. Thank you. So we are talking today about the battle at the binary stars, which
and let's start by talking about that title. Oh man, it's okay. So number one, as you were pointing out before the show, Dom, battle at, not of.
Right.
Of is the standard preposition in English for battles. Battle
Yes.
of the Bulge, Battle of Gettysburg, Battle of Iwo Jima.
Right.
Of is the standard, but even so, you might think battle, and apparently the producers of the show did think that Battle at the Binary Stars was a cool name. Might be, unless you know anything at all about astronomy, because the fact is most stars are binary. 55% of the stars in our galaxy are binaries, and therefore this is like battle at the gas giant, or battle at the two crossed roads, or battle at the Walmart, or something like that.
I mean, the fact is there in the history of the Klingon War, the Romulan War, any of the other wars that the Federation finds itself in, the odds are that they've probably had more than one battle in a system that's binary.
Statistically, 55% of their battles should be at binary stars, unless there's something else affecting the situation.
Right.
Now, to be fair about the grammatical issue, at least, and maybe this is just Memory Alpha fixing their mistake, but they do call the entry Battle of the Binary Stars. So the episode name is Battle at the Binary Stars, but the battle is called the Battle of the Binary Stars.
Right.
Now, again, I don't know if that's...
Whoa.
I don't remember if anywhere else in the series they explicitly call it the Battle of the Binary Stars or not, but at least Memory Alpha has fixed that problem. So
Right. So the actual title is given by the writers and producers is Battle at the Binary Stars, but Memory Alpha agrees with me and Jimmy and says, it should be Battle of the Binary Stars. So the listing about the episode has the actual title, but when they talk about the battle itself, they have the
title of the episode is Battle at, but the title of the battle is Battle of.
Right, but not
and it may be that they do refer to it in the show as Battle of the Binary Stars at some point, in which case we just have a minor contradiction.
Yes, a minor inconsistency.
I mean, that'd just be like having a title of Battle at the Hill is the title of the episode. Right. And then, Bunker Hill is the actual battle at Bunker Hill.
I don't want to spend any more time on it, though.
Anyways.
We're at the risk of people going, what a bunch of Star Trek nerds, and moving on. So, but point noted.
We're doing a show called Secrets of Star Trek. That's kind of implied.
People knew what they were getting in for when they clicked play.
That's
Anyways.
true. So to recap, I mean, this is really, as I said at the top, this is the second half of the pilot episode. These two episodes go together. The only reason they're separate is because CBS, in its attempt to market the show and get people to sign up for its CBS All Access streaming service that most of the show is only available on, they have they aired Vulcan Hello on their regular broadcast network, CBS, and then put the second half on CBS All Access, the streaming service, so that you had to go there to watch it and hopefully sign up.
But they were both available. Like the second episode was available immediately after the first episode aired.
Yes,
so it was so you could watch them in concurrence, which then makes it a lot like a lot of the other Star Treks we talked about, Voyager and Enterprise and things like that, where they were longer two-part episodes that were one.
Right.
And then later for syndication, they broke apart into two.
Right. From TNG onwards, all of them have had two-part initial episodes. So, when we talk about, so this aired the same day and date, September 24th, 2017. So to recap this half of the what's essentially a prologue to the entire series, we have where we left our hero. She was in the brig, Michael Burnham. She was put in the brig, and then the battle started. Right?
No, she was on the bridge.
On the bridge.
And all the Klingon ships had just showed up, and she was about to fire on them, and that's when we faded to black.
Right. So as we start this episode, Giorgio puts her in the brig, Michael Burnham, And
so her Vulcan hello fails.
Yes.
And we therefore never learn what would have happened if she had gotten her way.
Right. Her attempt to do the Vulcan hello fails anyway. So she doesn't actually fire on them first. Which is, when you back up a bit, she gets blamed, or skip ahead a bit. She eventually gets blamed for this battle. You caused this disaster, this war to start, but that doesn't really make sense.
How is this her fault? I mean, she did stage a mutiny, but then her mutiny failed.
Later on, I think the explanation is in this episode why she gets blamed. It's towards the end, but I think the explanation is there.
Okay.
She loses Captain Giorgio and so forth.
When she killed Kuvma is what causes the war. This would have just been another indecisive battle or another battle that the Klingons won, because they talk about how if Kuvma is killed, he becomes a martyr. But if they capture him, he just becomes a prisoner of war. Right. What does Burnham do? When she sees Giorgio killed, she flips the phaser from stun to kill and kills him. Because you do see, it's really quick, but you do see, because they show the phaser, it's got the blue light showing it's on stun. And right before she pulls the trigger, you see that switch to red, and then she shoots.
Okay.
What I think they are trying to say is why they say she caused it.
They could have made that a little clearer.
Well, it wasn't explicit, no, but
in later episodes, she gets blamed for the battle, which is not her fault. The battle itself, she was in the brig when that started. Like her plane never got off the ground, so she didn't start the battle. But when we rewatch, I'll have to watch for it. But I have this feeling that she gets blamed for the losses in the battle itself, which is not.
See, I don't,
fair.
I don't remember that, but it's been 6 months or whatever it was since I last watched these. 10 months since I last watched these. So
there's also, and this could be dismissed as fan rationalization, but there is also the phenomenon that happens in real life of when someone takes the blame for something, even though they may only be responsible for part of it, the public imagination, they take all of it. And she may just after her killing T'Kuvma, gets her the blame, then people start to ascribe blame for everything to her. Right. And she's so guilty over what happened that she doesn't want to challenge them on it. Says, I'm the Michael Burnham who started the war.
And she basically she pleads guilty to whatever charges. And so she probably just cops to everything and says, just put all the blame on me. Yeah.
She just gives up and I'm done. And
So, all right. So that's the end. At the beginning, we have.
You've enjoyed this episode of Secrets of Star Trek.
So from the beginning, we have we have this flashback to when she first arrives on the Shenzhou. Sarek is bringing her, and I'm. Did Burnham not?
Is she a pseudo Vulcan jerk at the beginning?
well, there's that. But even more fundamental, did she not go to Starfleet Academy? Did she just graduate from the Vulcan Science Academy and get an appointment directly to the Shenzhou as an officer?
Maybe that works as an exchange program kind of thing.
Yeah, then
they kind of implied that because she wasn't wearing Starfleet uniform or anything like that when she came on board,
right?
Which is kind of amazing then, because it shows Saru on the bridge as they walk in 7 years ago.
As a science officer,
in 7 years, she leapfrogged him from, you would assume, ensign to
lieutenant commander. Yeah, right. I forget what Giorgio's actual rank is. Like the captain of a ship is called captain, no matter what their actual rank.
Necessary? Yeah, right. Isn't always necessary an actual captain. It might be a commander.
Right. So I don't remember exactly what the ranks were, but yeah, she certainly leapfrogged everybody from most junior officer aboard to second in command, which in retrospect, that actually seemed to have not been a good idea.
Well, I know. It kind of raises questions about Captain Giorgio's judgment.
Right.
Promoting her so fast.
And Starfleet in general.
100 years later, poor Harry Kim is the 7-year ensign, but
yeah.
Poor Harry.
Admittedly, there weren't a lot of. I mean, I guess you could say there were enough crew deaths. There should have been room for advancement there, but other than that, there's not a lot of rotating in and off the ship to other assignments.
I mean, just to kind of be at the tangent, Harry was the most junior officer aboard, so he had to have been places that he could have gone up from where he started.
Couldn't go any further down.
Yes. Anyways, so one oddity I noticed in that opening scene where Giorgio sends her off to the brig, every shot during this standoff is tilted, and I found it an odd directorial choice. Any
angles,
Dutch angles. That's the term. Any idea why they made that creative choice? What that's supposed to convey?
I think it's meant to convey that space is a 3D environment, and so combat in space shouldn't be understood as like a tabletop type game.
No, I'm not.
That's one way of gesturing at it.
I'm not talking about like the between the ships. I mean, on the bridge.
No. I think it's the same thing. It's a way of telling us this is a ship in space. Don't expect its orientation to line up the way you would expect it to on a planet.
And there could also be the stress of the battle that, if you ever watch footage, like say from the Vietnam War of when they're actually in battle, the camera's not always perfectly aligned.
But it's not even that. I mean, it's the only time they do it in the episode, and it's not during a battle scene. That's the standoff between Giorgio and Burnham.
Okay, because I noticed in the previous, and I wasn't tracking this question in this episode, but I noticed in the previous episode we got a lot of tilted ships in space.
Right.
And if you're seeing tilted ships in space, then when you yourself on that ship, makes cinematic sense to also have that interior shot be tilted rather than we're seeing tilted ships in space and then all of a sudden we're seeing absolutely 90-degree aligned shots once we're inside.
Well, if you watch it again, or if folks watch it, keep track, because it's only on the close-up shots of Burnham and Giorgio they're tilted. On the wide shots they're not, and in shots of other places on the ship they're not. But only in those, I felt like they were trying to convey something, but I couldn't figure out what it was, or maybe just stress
and then unease.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it seemed weird to me.
What leapt out at me in like the bridge sequences in a way that really hadn't clicked for me before, even though I've been seeing it since Next Gen, is they have a bunch of no-sit Starfleet stations right there on the bridge where a lot of people don't have chairs.
Yeah,
and it's like, what modern office design they've got. I mean, that's
exactly.
Like lots of places now are promoting no-sit stations.
Although if it sort of evokes a 20th or 21st century aesthetic for U.S. naval ships or Coast Guard ships, where they don't have seats. Everyone stands at their station, except for the captain. The captain has a chair, but everyone else stands at a station. So they might be sort of evoking a little bit of that. But yeah, I mean, it reminds us of Worf's spot behind Picard where he had the railing that he got to stand at. What's your station? No, I stand at the railing. Just I kind of stand at the rail.
Sitting is not healthy.
Right. So we find out, we get to Kuvma's backstory here. We get a little more about some of it, right? We find out that the big coffin ship, the sarcophagus ship, was his father's ship. But it was abandoned when he died, and Takuvma, restored it. Almost, they couldn't kind of the idea that through like sheer force of will.
Yep.
If you want to read about that, that story is actually told in a mini series in the comics in Star Trek Discovery comics. This is one of the nice things these days about some of these series like Star Trek Discovery, and the same thing was true of Battlestar Galactica, where a lot of the comics are written by the show's creators, and so they're meant to be either canonical or semi-canonical.
Right. Like Star Wars takes that to the extreme, where everything that's published has to be approved. Star Trek a little less so. There have been contradictions in places here and there with so many books and comics and things, but when but in this case, it's a tie-in that's meant to fill in the backstory of Takuvma and the sarcophagus ship. Right. So Takuvma's big claim, one of the reasons he's attacking the Federation, in addition to reuniting the Klingon houses who have been at war with one another, is his claim that the Federation would destroy each Klingon individuality by getting them to mix with the other species, which is a sort of that classic xenophobia, fear of the other thing that Star Trek has often done. So it's not necessarily just a contemporary social political statement, but this
has been with Starfleet since the beginning.
Right.
Star Trek.
You're right. The left white, let
that be our last battlefield. That was an awesome episode. It's kind of silly on one level, but that moment where you realize, there is a difference between these two guys, and we the audience have not seen it this whole time.
Right.
And it's totally trivial, but it's totally important to them, and it's like, that's a cool moment.
Right. That is, and we'll eventually talk about that episode here. But yeah, so this topic has been part of Star Trek for a long time. So then we have another great moment was this scene where Burnham is in the brig after the Shenzhou has been blasted, and basically the brig is holding on by force field. Like, that's the only thing that's keeping her safe, is these force fields surrounding her little place.
She's basically got like a 10-foot by 10-foot square, and that's it. Right.
And she can't get the computer to recognize that it needs to let her escape from this. And I'm like, wow, people have problem with Echo and Siri in the future too. I mean,
it's like this AI didn't really pan out, did it?
Exactly. It must get better by the time of Next Generation. But she does eventually convince it to let her go. But I thought that was a really cool scene where she had to, kind of talk through it and convince it that it needs to help her get free.
Also has that telepathic communication with Sarek.
Yep.
And they don't explain it here. And I think some fans criticize it's like, how is she? Vulcans are not that telepathic, and humans certainly are not. Right. How are they talking over all this distance? I mean, normally Mr. Spock either had to touch your face,
right,
or at least be on the other side of a wall in order to mind meld with you. And they don't spell it out here. They do in a later episode, but Michael is carrying part of Sarek's Katra,
right,
or his soul. And so that's why they're able to do this.
Did briefly mention it, but they didn't go into any detail.
Right. There's there is established in some place in Star Trek lore, and I'm trying to think of whether there's a book or whether it's on air, but that once you've mind melded with somebody, once a Vulcan has mind melded with somebody, especially several times, it creates an ever increasing telepathic bond. So that might be part of it as well. But the Katra thing, long established since Star Trek 3 and 4, the movies. So we have the battle, and if you're into space battles, this is a pretty good space battle.
Yeah, although the ships, as usual on Star Trek, are way too close to each other. There's no way you would get that close to somebody in an actual space battle.
Right. If you want to see how a space battle like this might look in reality, The Expanse does a good job of showing these vast distances. Even then, they kind of shorten it because you don't want to wait 2 hours before a missile hits.
And I think Battlestar Galactica did a good job of that as well. They're not like right up next to each other, and there is time lag between when the missiles get launched and when they hit.
BSG did a good job, and even back in the end of the 90s, Babylon 5 was doing stuff in this direction where it wasn't made explicit on screen, but these ships were meant to be thousands of miles away, and they're shooting at each other, but you never see them on screen next to each other.
Right.
Is the way they handle that.
On Star Trek, starships dogfight, basically.
Really close dogfights.
I mean, even today, naval battles would not take place within sight of each other. So Father Corey, you were gonna
also. I was gonna say, it makes even less sense to have them that close when they're using directed energy weapons that travel at the speed of light.
Right.
It's not going to take that long to get between the two ships.
Now that said, for the sake of drama, and for the battle drama, having this sort of close combat ramps up the drama.
It's really intense. Also, it's another thing in terms of dramatic intensity that makes no sense on the logical level that also involves timing. I noted at the end of our previous episode how the Klingon ships all miraculously show up within seconds of each other, despite not apparently having been staged anywhere. Yeah. And we have the same exact problem with Starfleet here. All the Starfleet ships show up miraculously within seconds of each other without prior evidence of being staged anywhere. And it would make even less sense in the case of Star Trek than in the case of the Klingons, because at least you could headcanon the idea that maybe they staged somewhere and then arranged a procession to their great signal light for religious reasons. But Starfleet has no reason to do that.
Yeah. Well, then you get they all show up except the Europa, the one with the command, with the admiral, because of course, plot.
Of course. The Europa arrives just in time to save the Shenzhou from crashing into an asteroid. And then they themselves are rammed by the Klingon, the sarcophagus ship that decloaks in the middle of the ramming. It's kind of an odd thing. And I mean, Star Trek has established that cloaking devices are essentially invisibility fields. Like they make hard surfaces invisible. We saw that in Star Trek 4.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a hard one to buy. I like the idea that the shields create a field around it that causes light to pass through, but
yeah,
I have a hard time with that one.
Actually, I think cloaking, and this is actually something they spelled out pretty early in the original series, in the Enterprise incident episode, where Kirk captures a cloaking device, and the Romulan commander tells him this is just going to be upgraded.
Right.
It's a constant war of escalation.
The title of the episode,
kind of technology.
Yeah, was that the Balance of Power? No, that was the other one.
No, Balance of Terror was the first one. This was where, with the female commander, that Kirk woos and gets a cloaking device into the bargain.
That's right. The
fictitious Vulcan death grip.
Yes, the Vulcan death grip.
We have an actual human death grip. It just involves using both hands around the neck.
Exactly.
So the bigger problem I have with this the Klingon ship ramming the Europa is the admiral, gets Takuvma to agree to a ceasefire, and then Takuvma rams his cloaked ship into the Europa, and I'm like, is that not a tactic worthy of a Romulan? Where is the Klingon honor in that? So that was a problem with that.
On the other hand, the original series Klingons were not portrayed as honorable. That was the Romulans, and then by Next Gen they flipped it because they wanted Worf to have an honor culture.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. Admittedly, not knowing a lot about how physics works in space, but you would think that if you rammed a ship like that at a slow speed like that, this wasn't a high speed ramming, this was slow pushing in.
Right.
Wouldn't you eventually push the other ship?
Yeah,
and stop ramming?
Right. When the ship doesn't, the ship has no friction to keep it in place. The Europa. I mean, unless the engines are still pushing forward, I guess. But that's.
I also assume that it's just slow motion for the benefit of the audience.
Right.
Fair enough. It seemed like, though, when it flashed between the ramming and the dialogue in the Shenzhou, that it was real time.
Right. That's true. So go ahead.
I wonder, and so we have a lot of this stuff with Klingons in this episode that just made me wonder. You've got, when they're talking amongst themselves, you're Klingon, or some dialect of Klingon, and it's only when we have a universal translator present, like in the communicators, that we hear an English translation of what they're saying. I forget. Do they not translate it over the video transmissions when they're talking from ship to ship? Shouldn't that be translated? They
were implying that was available in Enterprise. Towards the end of the series of Enterprise, that they could do, that the universal translator for communication between ships was becoming available. So that was previous to this.
if it's built into the communicator, because once they're on the sarcophagus ship and they flip open a communicator, we can understand what the Klingons are saying. But if it's built into a communicator, it should be built into ship-to-ship communications technology.
Right.
So that didn't make sense to me, if I'm remembering that correctly. So I just found myself wondering, who is this supposed to appeal to? I mean, think how niche we are here. Most Star Trek fans do not speak Klingon. And most Star Trek fans are going to find the constant use of subtitles for these long stretches annoying. And yeah, okay, there's some conceptual niceness to we only hear it in English when the translator's present. That's kind of cute. But we got all this stuff over these 2 episodes of listening to them do this guttural dialect, sucking the spit around their fake teeth implants, and it's kind of painful to all this Klingon delivered this way. And I'm thinking, who is this for? Then the Klingons themselves. Who are these Klingons designed for? This wasn't to please the fans. They've got this ridiculous built plastic body armor with the shoulder spikes. It's like, no wonder a couple of human women are able to kill the most important Klingons. They're severely encumbered by their stupid armor.
On the second part of it, the design, the producers have actually are back walking that back a bit in the second season.
Good.
Yeah, but
just it made me wonder watching this episode, who did they think all this Klingon painful sequences was going to appeal to?
I think they felt like this is the authenticity aspect. Like it's real because they're alien and they look alien and they speak alien. And so it feels more real and gritty, like we get with, I don't know, Game of Thrones or shows even that take place on Earth where you hear lots of long stretches of people speaking Arabic or Russian. So I think that's supposed to be the appeal, but you're right. It just was tedious after a while. Just have them do it like the old, the World War II movies did. Have them speak German for about 5 lines in subtitled and then just switch them over.
British accents.
Right.
Yeah, it works for anything.
And I think there, part of it was get that little bit of a shock when you have, like in the previous episode, Vulcan Hello, where Kuma's talking about how they tell their lies. He's saying this, they tell their lies in Klingon and then immediately switches to English. We come in peace.
Right.
Same thing here where he's talking.
October moment.
Same thing here where he's talking in Klingon. And then when he gets on the communications between the ships, then he switches to English.
Right. It's supposed to highlight the contrast. I get that. It's
for people who may not be aware, they do a cute thing in The Hunt for Red October where you have Sean Connery speaking in Russian at the beginning of the movie, and then he starts reading from, I guess, from the Book of Revelation, I think, and when he gets to the word apocalypse, it switches into English.
Yep.
Right. So moving on, one of the things I found interesting was with that Brig scene where Burnham has to escape. I forgot to mention this earlier. She has to engage the ethical protocols, which I thought was kind of funny and an interesting question. Like, because this is actually a contemporary concern as computers get A, smarter, quote unquote, and B, more in control of dangerous things in our everyday lives, like cars. These kinds of questions come up as how do computers make ethical decisions? So it's like in today's thing, if we have an autonomous car and we get the trolley problem, the car needs to decide whether to run down the people to the left or the people to the right. How does an autonomous vehicle make these choices? Whereas a human being, makes his choices using their moral background, their conscience, and that sort of thing.
And panic.
And panic, really. Yeah. So I just find it interesting that to contemplate this idea of these ethical protocols that the Starfleet
which are apparently turned off most of the time.
Right.
It's like Starfleet leaves its computers in unethical mode. Yeah. Really? That's the default?
But I do find it an interesting topic to kind of address this idea of, the ship's computer, which runs some aspects of the ship, has to have these ethical protocols as it makes decisions about things.
And it's been dealt with in Star Trek before. I think wasn't there an episode where Data had to deal with ethical issues, and they talked about that, and the Doctor and Voyager had similar kind of things.
All the way back to the original series with the Ultimate Computer.
Right. The M5.
Yes. Yeah, right. Exactly. And it's so, I mean, this is always, again, it's another one of those things that Star Trek has always dealt with is ethics and technology, morality and technology. So I don't know. I found it an interesting, it triggered an interesting thought for me on that idea. So as we said, we get to a point where Burnham now wants Georgiou to capture, not kill T'Kuvma, because she doesn't want him to be a martyr. And then, for some reason, quickly shifts to saying, let me kill him. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, what happened to the don't let him be a martyr a few minutes ago? It was a shift, and did I miss something? I mean, it's entirely possible.
Well, I mean, there was that they wanted to disable the ship by taking out the neck of it, but not destroying the ship.
Right. Just sort of detach the front, where the bridge is, from it. I guess so.
Right. To cripple the ship so that they could then go in and capture him, which was their plan.
Yeah.
That went awry.
And the way they did that was they attached a bomb to one of the Klingon bodies in space that were being tractored aboard. Which point I said, why wouldn't they just beam the bodies aboard? Just beam them all aboard. Okay.
Too old of a ship. It doesn't have a transporter. I don't know.
Okay. There was, because with a transporter, it would usually they've established that transporters detect explosives or other things. Yeah.
Yep.
I noted that in the that final scene where Burnham and Georgiou beam aboard to get to T'Kuvma, that it's Vok who attacks Burnham. By the way, which becomes interesting as we find out later. Spoilers.
He's going to have a change of heart.
Yes. He will be Ash.
The thing that kind of irritated me about that scene, though, is, okay, we already know that Burnham's emotionally compromised. So why do you send her on the away mission over to the other ship? Never mind the whole issue of Star Trek sending the captain to the most dangerous situation instead of showing the lowest ensign at the most dangerous situation.
Captain and the first officer.
And the first officer instead of the security team.
Right.
And again, who is the first officer who is emotionally compromised? It's already clear about that.
Right. Logic would say you send a well-armed security team whose job this is over there, like 30 of them, to go grab T'Kuvma and bring him back, not the captain. I mean, it's just kind of crazy.
That's one thing I did like about, now this is going back to the Enterprise.
Yes.
That they introduced the Marines.
The Makos.
The Makos,
yeah, I like the Makos.
I did like that because it takes that issue away. But of course, this is Star Trek, and they had to throw in that line: "We're explorers, not soldiers."
Right, as they shoot their phasers.
We come in peace.
That the phasers and photon torpedoes that their ships are equipped with.
Exactly.
So
that's the line from this song "Star Trek," and y'all remember that?
Oh, this one about we
British parody song.
We're always going forward because we can't find reverse.
Yes, yeah. And they give each one of the original series characters a line, and Kirk's line is, "We come in peace, shoot to kill, shoot to kill, shoot to kill. We come in peace, shoot to kill, shoot to kill."
So then as we get to the end, the post-battle repercussions, where we set up the rest of the season, if not the series, with Burnham's court-martial, which takes place in the dark. Apparently, we do court-martials in there. They kind of reminded me of a
Star Chamber.
You're right. Why are they in the dark? What are they hiding? I know it's for the dramatic feel of it. Mm-hmm. Burnham now is in a dark place, so to speak.
And then the Phantom Zone comes down and takes her away.
Yes,
exactly.
With where she'll come back with Superman. So does these two episodes successfully set up the season for us? Because it's really the season is an arc. Apparently, season 2 will have a different arc, but does it successfully set up the season arc?
I think in a flawed way, yeah. There's a lot here. When I first watched these episodes, they were enjoyable. They still have enjoyable aspects. They got a bunch of flaws, but they do, certainly it's far from the worst of the of the Star Trek pilots we've seen.
Sure.
I mean, Encounter at Farpoint and The Caretaker were both much worse than this. And I'd kind of put this on the same level maybe as Broken Bow. It as a series pilot, it had some enjoyable stuff. It had some really nice stuff. It also had some flaws, but it does serve as an effective prequel to the series. And you really do need to see this if you're going to understand what's happening later on.
Right.
Agreed.
I did find, if I recall this line correctly, Giorgio at one point, when Saru and Burnham agree on something, she says, "Am I in a parallel universe?" And I'm like, "Hey, you might be."
And she tells one of the bridge officers, "Make a note of this," and he says, "So noted."
Right. It was an interesting hint that the writers were giving us. I kind of feel like it sets up the series, like you said, in a flawed way. It does what it needs to, which is establish Burnham, establish the setting of this war, and some of the other characters like Saru and Voch and the T'Kuvma, whose shadow will overshadow the rest of the season. And I think in that sense it's effective to a degree.
I also like the fact that our camera viewpoint character is not a captain.
Yes.
For once, that's nice. That's a risk that they were taking as creators, and she's not going to be a captain anytime soon. I mean, Ben Sisko was functioning as a captain, even though his rank was only commander. He was the guy in charge,
right.
And here it's not the person in charge, and she then fails spectacularly,
right?
And that's another creative risk. But I like that. I like seeing the drama of her spectacularly fail and then be sentenced to life imprisonment.
Right.
That's a really dramatic outnote for the pilot.
Yeah. Because again, one of the things they're trying to do, and which is effective, is they're trying to get people to say, "I need to see the rest of this story. I need to subscribe to CBS All Access and watch the rest of these. What happens from here." I think it is. I think that was a very interesting choice, was to have your viewpoint character not only not be a captain, not be the leader, but be a failure and a criminal and someone who's broken down to nothing, and you're left with, well, what do we go from here? And it's an interesting journey back. So
transport, that's where we go from here.
Exactly. So should I go on to our feedback for this week?
Just one quick thing, one quick mention. T'Kuvma mentions Donatu 5.
Oh,
just briefly mentions the battle at Donatu 5, and that actually was mentioned also in, if I remember correctly, the Tribbles episode of original series.
Right.
It's just, again, one of those kind of one-line mentions, that there's been this battle at this star system.
Right. That is an interesting callback. Yep. So we got some feedback on our going all the way back to our first reboot of Secrets of Star Trek, episode 13, on being a Trek fan. Donna Copy said that she says, "We have all the Christmas ornaments. If you remember, like the Hallmark Christmas ornaments. I have the shuttle. That's the Galileo 7, but that's the only one I have." She says, "I never imagined when I bought them the first year they came out that I'd be doing it for the next 38 years and counting. We really should put the Star Trek ornaments on their own tree." And then she said, "One year for Halloween, we dressed up as Starfleet officers, and she made 2 Next Gen uniforms that she posted on our Facebook page, the picture." So that was cool. I love my little Star Trek space shuttle ornament that my wife lets me put on the tree. So then on our episode overview of the original series, Rami Leroy says, "Great episode. Thank you, Rami. I just finished a 1.5 year binge of all Star Trek movies and TV shows." And then she mentioned some of their favorite TOS episodes: The City on the Edge of Forever, Doomsday Machine, and Space Seed. Also blown away by A Taste of Armageddon. And also, can't believe you didn't bring up Bread and Circuses. I know, the one where
we'll get there.
We'll get there, right. And Rami said, "So glad someone told me about your show. We are too. And please pay it forward. Tell someone else about the show too."
Yep.
On our overview of the Next Gen, Fred Firestein says, My wife and I were still college sweethearts when TNG premiered, and we watched it in one of the college TV rooms. She was not a fan of TOS, whereas I was a big fan, but this we could enjoy together. He said Dwight Schultz was great on the A-Team. He plays Barclay on this.
Oh, yes.
And I recommend that especially fans of Leverage should go back and watch for similarities as a team of quasi-criminals come together to do good deeds. Yes, I love it when a good plan comes together. And then Alfredo Barunda says on that same episode, I recall we were puzzled by Worf as there was no clear explanation when he first saw the encounter at Farpoint of how a Klingon came to end up in Starfleet. That was an interesting aspect.
Yeah, and I think we commented on that in a later episode that may have aired by now, that Worf originally was not meant to be a main character. He was just meant to be a background extra, and he ended up breaking out.
Right.
Yep. And then on our overview of Enterprise, Mark LaRue says, count me as one of the fans who loved Star Trek Enterprise. And he says, I liked the theme song. I know. This is my commentary. There's someone for everyone. If you liked it, you're not alone. I'm sure there are others who did, but many people did not. But okay, I accept that. I grant you that.
And even I'm okay with the theme song for Enterprise. I don't hate it.
Right.
Appreciate what they're trying to do. It's not my favorite, but I appreciate what they're trying to do.
I'd say it's my least favorite. But I don't hate it. It's my least favorite. He really likes Scott Bakula as Captain Archer.
Oh, yeah.
The stories are good for the most part and occasionally excellent. My only problem is the NX-01 was upgraded much too easily. I liked the idea that the ship was technologically inferior to most of the aliens they encountered, and it was up to the crew to resolve their challenges and not rely on some cheesy on-the-spot techno-babble to squeeze out of a crisis.
Oh, by the way, we just happen to have the phase cannons in stores. They just hadn't been installed yet. But let's get that done right now.
Right. There was that, but it was a nice aspect of it that because they were so early on, they couldn't rely on reversing the polarity of the tractor beam, and that sort of stuff to always get them out of every problem. So
I would have gone even more inferior on the ship.
Right. That would have been interesting. So that's the feedback we got. We love hearing your feedback. We want more of it. So please send it to us. If you have some feedback on Battle at the Binary Stars or any of the other episodes we've had, let us know by visiting sqpn.com/trek or the SQPN Facebook page. Find this episode there and leave us some feedback. Or you can send us an email to trek@sqpn.com. You can find links relevant to our discussion on our show notes on sqpn.com. Remember that you can support the show and all of our shows at SQPN by going to sqpn.com/give and becoming a patron. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing... Well, we don't know what we're discussing yet. We'll actually have to talk about that. We're at sort of an inflection point in Secrets of Star Trek of where do we go from here. If you have suggestions of what you'd like to hear, some particular episodes or topics you'd like us to cover, please send us an email or leave us some feedback. We'd like to hear from you. So until next time, Father Corey Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Always glad to be here, and thank you, Dom.
And Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. This is Dom Bettinelli again. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and that you'll help us keep producing the podcast you love. Thank you for your generosity. To make your pledge and find out about the free thank you gifts we'd like to send you, visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give.